I don't know if I might have asked a variation of this, but is there something with the Atari where you saw something else and you might have said, I really wish my Atari could do that? I really wish my Atari had that ability?
Yeah, there was. I mean, I was jealous of Teleguard because it had a lot more power, especially back when I was running the system called Midgetron, which was absolutely uncustomizable. You couldn't change it if you tried. So I was jealous of that. And later on, there was technology that emerged for the ST that was the most amazing thing on Earth. Basically let you run cartoons on your computer. Like, you could have really elaborate animations that looked good as your BBS system. But I didn't have enough hard drive space or memory to run that, so that didn't come to pass.
Did you get, during your BBS days, did you get up past 1200?
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
I mean, don't insult me. I got all the way to 24. But I was always 3, lowercase o, slash 12, lowercase o, slash 24, lowercase o, because I remembered the early days when I wasn't allowed onto some boards because I didn't have high enough baud rate.
Do you understand their position, or do you think they were just being dumb?
No, they were jerks. Because it was all about wares to them, whereas to me it was about character.
And you always ran it on its own line, right? Or did you actually do part-time?
No, mine. I always had my own line for both my boards.
Did you ever deal with a part-time BBS?
Yes, but usually not for long. It only takes a few calls to someone's mother in the middle of the night before you give up and realize you can't keep track of their schedule. Coming back to that last question, I can remember that when I was calling other people's boards before I ever developed my own board, some of them had themes, and I was pretty impressed by that. Like, one of the BBS that I called was called the Stupid BBS, and it was run by a sysop named Weird Al, and everything on the board had something to do with Weird Al or a Weird Al song or UHF. And then there was another one called The Wall of Rock, and everything on there had something to do with Pink Floyd, and I was like, this is pretty awesome. So my friends and I, all on our BBSs, we always had themes, but we rotated ours every week, and we would usually, on all of our boards, like 6 or 7 different boards, we'd run the same theme at the same time. So, for example, we'd have Depressed Week on the BBSs, and then Apathy Week, and then, Terror Week. And we would just basically recustomize everything on a BBS that's customizable to fit the theme.
Did that work out for you? I mean, was that something...
It amused us greatly, yes.
But, do you think the users appreciated your work?
The users.
Can I ask you what your parents thought about you needing to get your online and set up a BBS or being involved at all? Did they pay for that? I mean, it must have cost a bunch to get it installed.
No, I paid for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they didn't really care.
But they had no compunctions about you being in that community like they do with girls?
They were concerned once they found out that I was occasionally dabbled in freaking, but other than that, they didn't care.
Did you learn to drive at a regular time? 16 and everything? Or?
No, later.
Later?
Yeah, like 18 or 19.
So, did you, do you think you were living as they might say, unbalanced because of it? I mean, did you not do other things because of BBSs, or did you get to do things that you wouldn't have done without BBSs?
Oh, I definitely did things I wouldn't have done without BBSs. Like most people in my suburb never went to the city, whereas I went all the time because that's where I met the other losers. So I got to like city living. And that was also where I met my first friends that had cars, because unlike most people my age, I had friends who were over 20. And I mean, yeah, I would say it created more opportunities than it prevented. I don't think it retarded my growth socially. It just maybe pushed it in a weird direction.
Mm-hmm. So you wouldn't change it, say?
Oh, no, definitely not.
If you had to explain to somebody who'd never been on a BBS what the draw of them was, I mean, what would you say was the draw?
I guess the opportunity to talk with a bunch of people who you would probably never have any reason to talk to in a regular situation. Like people separated from you by several generations, people from neighborhoods you would never otherwise go into, cities you've never been to, people way richer or poorer than you. Basically, instead of all your friends being from your class in high school, you could be friends with anyone in your area code who had access to a computer, or outside your area code if you're ambitious.
For me, the appeal was, I thought the most amazing thing was that you were yourself. The school that I went to, from nursery school through senior year of high school, was a private school that was about 100 people in each class. And by the time I graduated, I had known about 50 of those people since I was 3. So their opinions of me when I was 3 were the opinions they had of me when I was 18. And when I was 14, realizing that I could enter an environment where I wasn't prejudged and where I wasn't going to be judged on being a girl or what I was wearing or, if I was fat or anything that we make snap judgments about every 5 seconds when we decide whether or not we're going to talk to someone or ignore them out in the real world, if it's at work or whatever. Those things were all gone. I think that I am so comfortable with myself now because I was given an environment where it was completely safe to be myself and not have to run that obstacle course that you run, especially as a teenager. And to me, meeting a bunch of people when I was 14 that thought I was awesome, when I had been going to school with a bunch of people that thought I was lame, it was probably the most important thing that happened to me in terms of who I became. In terms of, validating the stuff in me that was natural and that I thought was good. Finding people that thought I was funny or worth talking to was a pretty big difference.
So for you, BBSs were a positive experience. That's what you're saying.
Well, yeah, of course. You interviewing any people that have a different take on that?
I've interviewed people and asked them what I consider to be softball questions that have elicited unusual answers.
There were some people I met at BBS meets and stuff like that, and once I'd met them, we weren't as close as we'd been before. For example, one of my co-sys-ops, who naturally I had made a co-sys-op because she was a girl, and as it turned out, he was a guy. I didn't like him as much after that.
The romance just didn't fly like you had hoped it was. And
Well,
you tried to make it work, and it just didn't work.
I don't think I'd really been romantically attracted, but I had thought the idea of communicating with a girl was pretty radical.
I seem to remember that the way it went was I would be signing up, and I would enter that I was female, and then suddenly I'd be in chat mode.
I don't have that same
That's
memory.
right.
Yeah, the sys-op is breaking into chat.
Type F again.
Yeah, yeah.
That turns me on.
You didn't mistype, did you?
My mom was, of course, I mean, she's very protective, but she was quite suspicious of me being involved in these things. She didn't mind me being online or anything, but she was worried about when it came down to real life people meeting me, because of course she was convinced that if somebody found out my name and address, they were probably an axe murderer.
That's true, actually.
Yeah, I know. So when it came time to first start meeting people, I was 14. I didn't have a car. They all lived at least 40 miles away. And I said, Mom, Dad, can I have a ride to the suburbs? I want to meet some friends. And in order to even go, she made me type up a list of everyone who was going to be in attendance, their name, their full name, their age, their phone number, their address, and what their occupation was. Presumably in case she needed to give all those bits of information to the authorities when I didn't turn up. One of my friends was a filmmaker at the time. He's working in Hollywood now. And I said, oh, you know, my friend Eric makes movies. What kind of movies? So it was a struggle, but once she met them and realized that they were sort of the opposite of... Not that they weren't interested in girls, but they were hardly creepy old men. They were more like developmentally retarded young boys. She wasn't scared anymore.
Just sad you had to get this 40 miles away as opposed to...
Well, yeah, but that was how it ended up being. But because of that, I mean, yeah, you had to come to the city. That's great. I had to go to the suburbs. Let's go to the mall. Not too good, but I also did meet up with a lot of people who drove and a lot of people who knew a lot of places. And I had a much more active social life, I think, than I would have if I hadn't met those people. I know that. Some of it was really lame, but it's fun.
My friends and I always referred to ourselves as geeks, and we referred to the act of using BBS as geeking. But in spite of that, I think we thought we were cooler than everyone. You know, in our own way.
It never mutated into GEQING, did it?
No.
Excellent. Just being sure. I won't have to erase the tape and shoot you. Well, because you know how things are. You watch something. You can watch something slowly mutate along the different groups until eventually it's like, for instance, the whole recent Juarez thing, which a lot of people think is like. I actually had a guy tell me that Juarez was a reference to an 18th century Spanish pirate, which was where they had gotten it from. And I was like, okay. That's incredible.
That's really good.
That's just, and you're like, I don't even want to really burst that mythology. That's really good. That's a good one. And that'll be the one.
No,
that
it's
persists,
true actually, and he was famous for his UL, the UL ratio.
Yeah, right. His ratio with 4 R's. R ratio. Did you? You ever heard of Leech Z modem?
Z modem. No, Leech was just an online game for us.
Okay. But in the old days, they had the old-fashioned way and call you at your house and threaten you. So,
yeah.
Ask more questions.
Okay, fine.
Sorry. I'm getting excited again, and we're probably only going to do this tape.
Well, I don't have a problem with a 5-minute third tape.
All right.
Don't worry about that.
All right.
Like I told him, these tapes cost me $5
Okay.
for an hour. All right, so we can blow a Lincoln on it. It's okay. For 5 loonies. In terms of the user community that you were a part of, were there any highlights that you can think of that were things where stuff was happening and you look back and you say, wow, that was a really good, like, in other words, you might have there might be a peak, you might say, or some event where you're like, and we had this event, we normally never did this, and this was incredible. Is there anything like that you can think of, or any sort of a contest or a interboard war, or just any kind of highlight?
I can think of 1,000 stories that answer that question. You want to go first?
I can't think of any golden age, so you shoot.
Well, we had golden ages. I mean, we had what we called the golden age of text files, which was back when text files were the best thing that you could possibly have on BBS. Like, they were better than wires, and they're better than messages, certainly, or games. But there was a time when people were just competing to see how many text files they could have up, and of what quality. And we were all writing stories and other silliness like crazy, and everyone would try and upload at least a story a day to some boards, including mine, and that was a really great time. That was when I started thinking of myself as a writer, and I think a lot of the other people I knew the same thing.
Did you keep any of them?
Yeah, I have hundreds of them.
I mean, did you... Obviously, we have to phrase an answer carefully, but do you continue to use those skills?
Yeah, I still make zines. One of the zines I publish is called Yip, and I'm a writer/editor as my job.
And you'd say, I mean, was it a case that the BBS's fomented this for you? I mean, it sounds like it did.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, communication for me is writing. And I'm basically translating things into words in order to speak. But I think I usually see the ASCII in the air and then pronounce it.
Do you find that people, I mean, nowadays, when you talk and deal with people who are online or come to your websites and so on, I mean, in ostensibly you talk to some amount with people who are of a more recent vintage online. Do you find them worse off for having not gone through BBS's first, or better off?
They're worse off. Yeah, they have my sympathy because they missed out on something that was really good and something I don't really understand why it ended. It was a different experience back when everyone was in the same area code and nobody was, I mean, broadly speaking, nobody was in it for the money. Everyone was in it because they loved it, and everyone was figuring it out at the same time, I think. Yeah, basically, I mean, if you called it BBS, it was hard to deny that you were doing it for the purpose of making friends, whereas I think a relatively small percentage of internet users would say that's the main reason they use the internet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they would say it's to communicate with friends or relatives, or to do business, or to find out about products they can buy and stuff like that. But not many people would say, yeah, I want to make friends.
Also, to download more porn in one evening than the total size of all communication on BBS is in 84.
Yeah, but this modern porn, it's crap. It doesn't match up to the old ASCII stuff. That was...
Like the ASCII boobs?
The ASCII boobs are awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I have a number of... I was actually busted when I was 12 for selling ASCII pornography in my school.
Wow.
Did you at least make
what a
some
thing to
good
go to
money?
prison for.
Yeah, I made some money off it. That was a great time.
Was it yours?
No, I was
Yeah.
actually a reseller.
Yeah.
It had ASCII children in it, or?
Dealer. No. It was digitized Playboy. Times were good. Well, that's the thing. I mean, at the time, one of the things that you notice is there's stuff there that's... One thing which I'm trying to pull out of people, which is a bit of a pain, is the difference in what represented precious currency back then compared to now.
I think I achieved COSIS-up status on a lot of boards by just writing good messages and uploading good stories. That made me a desirable user in some quarters, which was strange. Probably would never happen now.
A particularly good writer, and that earns you credit, it earns you space in a place. And a place says, you are so good at writing, we want you to help run it. But even beyond that, I mean, I've wanted to get on tape people's opinions of things like hardware conflicts. You know, this versus that.
I had a base devoted to it on my BBS, which I personally didn't read.
And it's funny because now everyone I talk to, every single person pretty much goes, it was just a bunch of crap. And it's so sad. It's like interviewing a bunch of World War II veterans all going, we shouldn't have had that battle.
Yeah.
You want to tell me about it? No.
The Germans weren't so bad.
Germans, we've really come to terms since then. It's okay. You know, you don't get any details. You don't get any of the... I actually had a guy who I interviewed who was... They were on a quest to destroy the local D-dial. They were against the D-dial. And on camera, one of them mentions to the other, how he's like, yeah, I never really mentioned this, but I kind of went to one of the gatherings at one point to meet this girl. And they go, what? You traitor! And it's just a beautiful little moment. And I asked him, you know, why he took his BBS down. And it was because his girlfriend wanted to call him at night, and he couldn't use the main one. And he just went, girlfriend, BBS. And that was the end of his BBS.
Why didn't you just get her a modem?
Well, I don't think she related to the modem at all. Yeah, that's right.
Weird.
That's right. She didn't like it, that's right. Don't like your motorcycle, and you sell the motorcycle instead of buying her a helmet.
Yeah. I like Liz because she can type really fast. And then later on I noticed she was pretty. So, she's pretty good.
Yeah, that's right. What are your measurements? 70, 80 words per minute. Do you see anything online on the web at this point that harkens you back to BBSs?
Pyroto was the big hope. I mean, Pyroto was probably my best experience in all of BBSing. It was totally addictive and wonderful. And when I saw that was coming back to the web, I was like, good, I'll quit my job and spend my days playing Pyroto. But it turned out to not be as good as it used to be. It's not the same on the web.
Tim contends that, of course, or contests that, I should say, about its quality now versus then. He has an impression, as he put it, he thought that a golden age for people represents the first 6 months they were online.
No.
Oh, definitely not.
Mm-mm.
I would like to delete any record of that that may exist.
Yeah, we'll just hurl that comment of Tim.
Yeah.
No. I mean, the first BBS I called was called Cyber Squid. That was the first one I logged into successfully, and at that time, I was the stupidest person on earth, and they happened to have very complete archiving on that BBS. So later on, when I was sort of the senior user on the BBS, everyone really liked to occasionally quote my first message back to me. Hello, how does this work? All caps. You know?
Oh, so you actually could, I mean, ostensibly you could actually recall and deal with your first message.
Yes.
You actually
Oh
remember
yeah,
it.
I remember my first message clearly. I was like, I don't know how this thing works, but my sisters and I are going to get some pizza. I mean, these words were tossed back in my face on many occasions.
Wow.
I read that, at one of my speeches, I read a message. When you answer the trivia question correctly, you got to write a message that all the users could see. And I wrote a message, and I and I read it out loud, this thing. And I read it, and at the end I just said, and that was me when I was 13. You can just imagine. Got any credit cards? That bold, idiotic approach of just, I just need a number, and then I can order anything I want.
Yeah.
And there was like a bunch of that in that thing. I can do anything I want to. I'm smart. You all suck. And yeah, that just comes from growing up while being online PBSs. You know, you see, you know, the maturity level increases. I mean, so for you, there's not really a thing that you look at now that reminds you of BBS?
The closest thing would be a mailing list. But, I don't... Yeah, a mailing list is a lot different. They're usually a huge geographic variety, and, like, the chances of everyone on a mailing list getting together are usually pretty slim.
Regional news groups, maybe, but they're all divided by topic, so you don't get that different glimpses of people's personalities as they post to the music board or the general board or whatever. You just know that, you know, they eat out or they fix computers or whatever.
And usually the medium doesn't have any personality of its own. It's only the people who are there. Whereas with BBSs, you were at the BBS, effectively.
It sounds to me like you have a belief that the environment that people interact in should play a part in the conversations. I mean, that sounds like a
Yeah, I would say
I'm hearing it from you that you know, it's not just a matter of that there should be a BBS where people post on. There should a BBS, and the BBS software itself should take an active role in getting people.
Well, I don't only miss the people. The people are still around. I'm still friends with the majority of them. But I miss BBSing, which you can't do anymore, really. I mean, you can telnet to BBSs, but that's pretty pathetic.
So you don't buy into the telnet BBSs?
No, I don't think so. I don't think they're anything like BBSs, where they're usually very sparsely populated by people who live in different countries, and it's not the same thing. And
You don't appreciate something if you never get a busy signal.
that's true. I think that was one of the biggest downsides of Pyroto when it went to the web. You could always get on. That sucked. Part of the thing with Pyroto, like when me and my friends were making a big move on Pyroto, we'd be like, okay, I'm going to log off in 1 minute. You have to get ready to auto dial in 10, 9. And then stay on for exactly 3 hours. That's when I can call again.
So for you, the lack of convenience was part of the quality.
Oh, yeah, I mean, when there's a limitless supply of Pyroto, then it doesn't seem quite as precious. But when you are only allowed one call every 12 hours and you're not even sure if you can get through, and if there's some line noise and you accidentally get hung up on, you're out of luck, it makes it pretty sweet while you're there.
So for you, it sounds like Pyroto would have been between a rock and a hard place to maintain you as a user, because they couldn't stay with BBSs, and it sounds like there would have been inherent flaws in the web setup. I mean, is there a way they could have done it in a way that you would have liked?
Yes.
I won't ask you to give out a full critique, but okay, just so there is something. It's not just a. I mean.
Yeah, I mean.
It's not just a.
Pyroto
it's new and I don't like it, and I can't tell you why.
Oh no.
Okay.
It's pretty easy to quantify. They could have just said, you know, you can only call once every 24 hours or something like that, but they didn't. You can pretty much stay online all day with Web Pyroto.
Just keep.
You'll
never get your pill.
Yeah, the crucial difference between Pyroto then and Web Pyroto now, and BBSs versus websites, is it became about banner ads instead of a social experiment.
So you, it sounds like for you, like the thing that doesn't get. I mean, I look back on BBSs and I remember pay BBSs. I remember BBSs with ads on them. I remember
ads.
Sure.
BBSs? No.
That's how I think of the Versadials, actually. The Versadials always used to have ads, as I used them.
Ads for what?
Whatever. The Versadial itself.
Mm-hmm.
Local vendors, software that was being sold.
Whoa. Yeah, see the difference?
We interrupt your chat to tell you this, and you would go, "Buh."
No, that would make sense, I guess, if it was a real name board. But the DDoS I called were purely social, and there was no advertising of any kind. It wasn't about being on a computer. It was about talking to people. The /M's were all song lyrics or what someone was wearing, or some really incredibly pithy thought that some 9-year-old had that day.
I don't remember ever seeing an ad except for a BBS or a hacking group.
Now, did you when now there was a period of time from like late '89 onward when BBS software starts getting 4-color ads in newspapers and starts getting boxes and starts selling for $500 or $1,000. Granted, there are hundreds of free ones, but I'm saying there's a sudden attempt to make it pay, to make it legitimate, to make it an industry. I mean, were you cognizant of that, or was that just something happening off in the distance?
That was not on my radar personally.
It was a huge deal when Red Ryder became White Knight. That was when everyone sort of decided whether or not they were going with the sellout or the indie or whatever.
Whether they're going to show up at Watson's house with a sock full of sand or
yeah,
not.
I mean, why are we going to pay all this money for something we've been enjoying that was fine for years, and why do you think it's so great? And I don't know, everyone switched to Z-Term, which was way better.
Uh-huh. So for you didn't buy in. You didn't think this was...
I think I tried it, but it was no big deal. What was happening in the compression area was a little more interesting, actually. And to some extent with, what was it called? Point software and FidoNet clients for the Mac. That was getting commercialized as well. There were 2 kinds, I think. And that started out as free stuff, but then it became something that they actually tried to market as point software for FidoNet, which, wow, there was no market there.
Yeah, see, I'm thinking of... I mean, you were a part of FidoNet?
I was the moderator of EchoMac when I was 15.
And you were not, I take it. No, you
I used FidoNet. I didn't help run it.
I was there.
And that was a real experience because here I was, 15, and here were these people, adults, supposedly, calling me to complain about their personal relationships with one another on the news group, which had nothing to do with posts about, the new version of columns or whatever we were talking about. But I had to manage this couple of sorts that one of them was in DC, one was in Palo Alto. They were grown-ups. They had apparently gone together at some point and had sex, and now were antagonizing one another across the news group. And here I am, I'm a freshman in high school, and they're calling me on the phone. You've got to make him stop. You've got to ban him from the group. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. Real drama. And I think that even the stuff that is supposed to be computer-based, we're all people, so it all comes back down to the dynamics and the relationships. But that's why we went, too.
Now,
if it had just been about, bits and bytes, I don't think it would have captured anyone's heart.
You didn't, you didn't run a BBS, so you were a moderator on someone else's BBS, right?
I was a point, actually.
No, you were a point. Okay.
I was a point. Yeah.
I count that as being a BBS, just a very quiet one.
Oh, all right. All I did was receive and send FidoNet messages, but...
Well, that's something, because getting on the FidoNet, for some people, is a huge pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And you have to, convince now, the way it is now, or the way it was for a long time, was you had to convince the hub to give you a number.
Right.
And some of them were
I guess it wasn't that popular. I think I was 0.2 or 0.3, and I don't think there were many more than me.
For that net, okay.
Yep.
Now, what year is this that you're a point?
1989, 1990.
Okay. So you're coming right off the tail end of the International FidoNet Association, the IFNA. And things are still pretty jumping, actually, on FidoNet.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Plenty going on.
So for you, you liked FidoNet? Ostensibly you stumbled upon it at some point.
Sure, it was the way it tended to work on the couple boards that I called that had it would be, you got the regular news groups, and then there are the FidoNet news groups, or the message boards, rather.
Yeah, in
They're at the
Toronto,
end.
there were also the IPNet groups.
You
Alternate, whatever else was going on.
you're That's interesting to me because I'm speaking to Tom Jennings and you know, Mr. Madrigal, and I just ended up speaking to Fido News editor number 11, and I'm going to be speaking to Mr. Baker and Kozar and a bunch of people who are FidoNet architects. And I'm always interested what your reaction is when you first stumble upon FidoNet. That is to say, you're like, there's a what?
Like when you see the door out.
Well, however, I mean, you go, there's a what? With what? Where? Doing what? You know, because most people are like, it's a BBS. Oh, there's 30,000 BBSs.
Not only it's a BBS, but why is my BBS busy? Oh, because it polls for news every 4 hours. What? The BBS is calling another BBS? Whoa. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was cool. Obviously, it didn't have the appeal of the fact that you might have a lot more in common with the people because they're regional, but I just thought, oh, more topics. This is great.
One of the FidoNet news editor who I interviewed told me that for him, one of the draws was, what's his name? Might have been actually the other guy. I interviewed 11 FidoNet people in one weekend, and I got a little confused. But one of the ones they told me about that they loved about FidoNet was that you post something, and the first people who responded would be near you.
Right.
And the next people who responded to you would be sort of near you. And eventually people from around the world are going, yeah, I have this to say. So you had this very weird geographical wave feel to it because you would have, you know, locals would say something and then you'd get this wave of other folks.
I'll tell you when I really felt cool was when it got back to me, or I got an email, I guess, from a guy in Minneapolis who... Now, my father's, he had me at a later age, so he had me when he was 44, so he had already done quite a bit with life. So here I am, 15, and I'm moderating this group. I'm in charge of all these people, basically. And this guy writes me, and he says, I noticed, you know, that your name is such and such. Is this your dad? And I said, yeah. And he said, oh, yeah, your dad was, I was his first graduate student. So my dad's very first graduate student, who's like 55, is under me on this news group. I'm 15. That was pretty mind-blowing.
Forever subjugated to your family.
Yeah.
Be sure to fail him out, you know.
Yeah.
Give him a good...
Just block all his posts.
Yeah. Dad said you were a bit of a suck-up. How'd you go? Now there are actually other nets that existed. I don't know if you dealt with any. Did you deal with any?
If you spit them out, I'll be able to ping you back.
So IceNet. There was World War IV net. There was Rime. There was there was a number of subnets. There was Nirvana net. There was
no.
There's all these ones. I just wanted to see if there were any that you bumped into. Did you?
IceNet sounds familiar. I didn't really care for the nets that much. Yes, they had more topics, and some of those topics were interesting, but I wasn't all that interested in people I would never meet.
So there's a real strong geographical sense from you, is what you're saying. I mean,
I guess. I don't know. It seems strange. I mean, I feel petty or something, but
there is no pettiness.
But I certainly like the idea of talking to people across town more than... I mean, no, that's not even true. Because I thought it was really cool and really elite when you could talk to someone in the United States. Especially if you could pull it off for free. Whew. But that had novelty value.
Right.
Your friends, or online friends, were more interesting as a general rule.
Good news is that they're in the United States, but the bad news is they're in Buffalo.
Buffalo was exotic.
Did you ever do any cross country, like other besides the United States, any European or that you remember with Fidos, or was it just, you know?
I don't remember anything like that. Like, you know, there were definitely cross country people, but not. I don't remember people in other countries. There may have been, but I don't really remember it making an impression on me. In terms of other outreaches, I think I called a long distance BBS once. I think I probably called Penn and Teller's BBS. And yeah, it wasn't that good.
No, it's not.
And I left.
Yeah, it's great to call Penn and Teller's BBS, except A, Penn and Teller aren't there, and B, it's not exactly. It just was like, okay.
Yeah, here's a funny board. Okay.
Yeah.
Not that funny. Bye.
Magic Mofos, or I think it was the Mofo or the Mofo BBS or something, and it was.
I don't even remember. I just remember that it sort of sucked.
I always think about interviewing them about it, and then A, they probably would say no, and B, I don't think they actually ran it. The impression I get is like, for instance, Penn's, like Teller's website is run by an assistant. You know, I mean, I don't get the impression they ever really, not like, Jerry Purnell, who you knew actually would do his own stuff, or there's other guys who are like that, or Will Wheaton, who runs his website. I mean, he really runs his website, you can tell. It's not just like William Shatner's website, which is obviously run by a team. You know? And that's a major deal. Right?
Or, Gandalf. What's his name?
Ian McKellen.
Ian McKellen's webpage is so bad. You know he's doing it.
He didn't come up with that alias.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only guy that's still using Gandalf is Ian McKellen.
Oh, I think a lot of people are still using
Gandalf. I know.
That's the best part. It's about how people are A, still using old handles, and B, think they're the first.
No.
Nobody would think to use Inspector Gadget.
Oh, your name is Lieutenant Commander Data.
Yeah, but these days they'll sign up to Hotmail or something.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Welcome. We suggest you use the handle Iceman 8,966.
Right.
Well, that's the best part. The best part is the number. Because the number is just that way of saying, you are so not unique, we had to number you to make you fit in with the others.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think that's what Microsoft is up to there.
Yep.
Definitely.
Please do not think you're special.
Yeah. I don't know. What else? Is there any? I've been hitting you just random sucker punches all up and down your timeline. I haven't really. I took you away from your linearity. Is there something that's brewing or that comes to your mind?
At some point along the way, I was thinking of telling you about some of the colonizing efforts where we tried to spread our particular take on BBSs. Sometimes to places that didn't really want it, like boards that were really PD or boards that were really pirate, and to adult BBSs, which in Toronto at least, or in my experience at least, were a later phenomenon. They weren't there when I started, and they came, unfortunately. But we not only tried to convert any board that showed any sign of having a touch of silliness or absurdity to it, we would also go to boards that we thought were too normal. Like, everyone there, including the sysop, was too normal. And we engaged in an activity that we called Viking, which basically we would try and overrun the board with our personality. Like, we would have a few dozen people, and we'd just go in and we'd start talking to all the regulars, and they'd be like talking about, I don't know, whatever point thing, protocols or I don't know, packets or something, or wares, and we'd just reply something totally out of left field or something like that, and really engage them. And we were doing it sincerely. We weren't just doing it to make fun of them, but it was often pretty unwelcome.
The corollary to that for D-dials was called twitting. Somebody that was sort of a garbage user was called a twit.
And garbage.
Well, I know you weren't trying to annoy, but you may have been perceived as that. But the people that were really sort of not really, you didn't really want them, and they called up to, I don't know why they even called, sometimes they called to antagonize, but other times they were just dumb. They were twits. And I really like the sort of real social hierarchy on the D-dials, especially because there was commerce involved. Is you were divided into subs, people who have a subscription, that is a hard bracket, and could stay on for an hour or whatever, and nons. And they were just called nons, which makes them sound like untouchables or something. They had 9 minutes unless they had a friend online with a co, which is a pony bracket. If you have your co on, you don't have to enter it. So you don't have to show that you're a co. But you sort of put on your cloak of co-ness. And then you can start fucking with shit. But the best twit that I remember was a guy who called both Chicago D-dials, and his name was Wrestler, lowercase. And he never talked in the public channel to anyone, but he would log on, and within about a minute, every single person would have gotten a private message that said, "Do you like to wrestle?" That's about all he had to say. And to this day, I don't know how many people were Wrestler, but I think there was at least one genuine wrestler. And everyone hated him because they thought he was annoying. He took up a line. I mean, it's a big deal to be taking up a line if you're a waste of space. If you got a 6-line board, you got people that want to come in, you can be busy for hours. So one time I engaged Wrestler in a pretty lengthy conversation beyond just whether I like to wrestle, and I arranged to meet him. And because I had taken this interest in all these people in the suburbs, I had actually called Illinois Bell and ordered all the suburban phone books. And I asked him what suburb he lived in. And so I went and I found the phone book for that part of the city and looked up the address of a Dunkin' Donuts. And I told him that that was my house. Like, I just gave that address as my address. I said, "Oh, go there on this day, we'll meet up." And I kind of wanted to go, but that wasn't really what I was up to. So the next time I saw him online, I found out he actually went, because he says, "Where were you? I waited at the Dunkin' Donuts." And then it just hit me, oh my god, maybe Wrestler's really a real guy. He's not just like the best joke there ever was. Mm-hmm. I felt pretty bad, but I honestly thought he was one of the many villains that we already knew. Anyway, I mean, it's a pretty easy shtick. It's not too complicated, so I thought it was going to be like 5 big guys that would beat me up when I got there. So I didn't go. And then I thought maybe it is just this really, really pathetic little guy who just likes to wrestle.
Likes to know if other people like to wrestle.
Yeah. Well, he was named Wrestler.
Well, maybe that's because he knew that's what, I mean, you know, when you dress up as a, you know, cheese to attract mice, you don't really want to be a cheese. You just know that's what gets mice.
True.
So maybe he was just being Wrestler because that's who wrestlers talk to. Wrestlers talk to wrestler.
Yeah.
No, that's totally true.
That's how you know.
Yeah, maybe he just wanted a guide.
He wanted to enter the world of wrestling and he didn't know where to start.
Yeah.
But a wrestler would show him. Guide me.
No, I mean, I didn't frequent places where, I mean, I wasn't going out for wares. Like, I actually, one of the real name boards that I was on for years, I had no idea they had an elite section. I had no idea. And boy, was I surprised, because they talked a good talk on the main boards. A good talk about how bad piracy was. And then one day, Chuck just says, "You know what, I've given you more access." And boy, was I surprised to find I could get any program I wanted on this board that I had been in good standing on for years. It really blew me away. But I think maybe because I had acted like I wasn't interested and like I kind of was a goody-goody or something, I didn't have anything to do with that. But I knew people that I eventually later in high school did meet people like in classes that, you know, claimed to call Ribco and have card numbers and stuff like that, but I could tell by, you know, what jerks they were that it wasn't a place I wanted to be. And I didn't really believe in stealing from people's credit cards.
No, it's a kind of a tough one to pull.
Yeah.
Yeah, when that first number goes by and you're like, oh, what are you thinking? Oh, it's so bad. Mm-hmm. It's like the first time the heroin shows up at the party. And you're like, oh no, I'm going outside. I gotta go outside. You know, you're just like, okay, there's a threshold being crossed, and I'm not going there, and I'll be over here selling threshold T-shirts because I'm not going in.
Back in the day before they came up with these are only for your backup rationalization, which
no.
I love.
Me and my friends were using that from the very start. I mean, every time we gave each other something. Now, you know, buy this if you like it. Right. And absolutely seriously, yes.
Wow.
But, you know, we did that with hundreds and hundreds of games, and I don't think we ever bought one.
Right.
Yeah, well, now there's a really interesting, complicated series of that level of legal what do you call it? Legal trickery that kids who barely understand the concept of, say, the Bill of Rights or basic habeas corpus or anything like that will pull out this 18 paragraph thing that they think protects them. You know, that I've seen that in the early 80s. They do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you are aware you cannot be a member of law enforcement, and that being on here if you're not a member of law enforcement automatically...
I believe the popular phrasing was, "Are you a cop?" Why? Plus plus ATH.
Are you a fed? Are you a cop? Are you a fed?
Yeah, that actually protected you completely.
Is that
you could never be prosecuted if you had that on your site.
Is it before or after MRF?
I don't know about that one.
Because that's... I can imagine the programming. It says, well, he's a cop, but it's a chick. Come on!
Yeah.
Woohoo!
Yeah,
Policewoman!
that's kind of hot. Yeah.
Dude, she's got a gun.
I did call a board. There was one YIP BBS called Stellar Systems that was shut down by the RCMP, and the guy who ran it, Death Warden, you know, I considered him a good friend, but I never had his phone number, and that was in the days before email, so that was it. Never heard from him again. If you lost your modem, you lost all your friends. That was true with some girls I liked too. Like, their parents would get angry at them. They would confiscate their modem, and the relationship just sort of waited until they managed to sneak the modem back.
The Montagues have taken away her modem.
Yeah.
Oh no, she's a Montague. She's a Montague and she's not elite.
Yeah, my parents would never let me go out with anyone who didn't have 1 day old wares.
Anyway, that's pretty much it for this tape.
Okay.
We're down under 30 seconds. Now, do we want to go to the third tape, or where do you feel?
I think we've got a little more.
Okay.
A little more.
We'll do that.
Sure.
Time's sort of flying.
I'm not bored.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not bored either. I
You're
got a
not
little
bored,
more
you're
for
not
you.
tired. I'm not sitting there trying to drag stuff out again.
Would you like a drink?
Nah.
I've got a couple more funny anecdotes.